In our headlines on this Friday, August 1st, here in South Korea. U.S. tariffs on all imports will be in effect starting next Thursday. That is August 7th. And for South Korea, this means 15% tariffs on its exports headed for the American market. Foreign Minister Cho Hyun and his U.S. counterpart Marco Rubio hold constructive talks and have reportedly started coordinating for their leaders' summit. Meanwhile, South Korean exports expand for the second month in a row in July, gaining 5.9% on year, driven by cars, chips and ships. Country-specific U.S. tariffs are poised to take effect from next Thursday, that is August 7th. This is according to an order inked by the U.S. leader back on Thursday. Our Park Junan starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Thursday signed an executive order for the new reciprocal tariffs that will go into effect on August 7th. The imposition of new tariffs was pushed back from August 1st to 7th to allow Customs and Border Protection the necessary time to implement the new tariff system.
But I do know that the trade team has been working around the clock to try to be in correspondence with as many countries as possible. But if they haven't heard from us yet, they will in the form of a letter or an executive order by midnight tonight.
South Korea on Wednesday secured a last-minute deal to lower the reciprocal tariff from 25% to 15%. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the agreement allows significant investment for the U.S. and historic market access to American goods.
And South Korea will pay a 15% tariff rate, including 15% on autos, while providing historic market access to American goods like autos and rice. Korea will purchase $100 billion in American energy by 2028. And the centerpiece of this deal is that South Korea has agreed to invest $350 billion at the president's direction to revitalize American industry.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, speaking on CNBC, described the agreement between South Korea and the U.S. as a very good one. Bessent said South Korea was a special case because they had an election, a new government. So they were not in the position to fully negotiate. And they presented a very good offer. President Trump moved the offer up a bit, and we reached a very good agreement. On the same day, the White House posted a photo of President Trump with the South Korean U.S. trade delegation to social media, where it called the deal historic. Trump also took to social media to say details on South Korea's investments will be formalized during a visit to the White House by President Lee Jae-myung, set to take place in the next 2 weeks. Park Junan, Arirang News.
And Mr. Trump has also touted his tariff deals with a number of other U.S. trade partners as well. Our Ising Jae has details.
Just hours before reciprocal tariffs were set to take effect, U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Thursday that Washington had made some more trade deals. Speaking at an executive order signing ceremony at the White House, Trump told reporters that his trade deals are making trillions of dollars for his country, highlighting what he described as significant economic wins. Trump later announced a 25% tariff for India, 20% for Taiwan, and a 30% rate for South Africa. Meanwhile, when asked about failure to reach a trade deal with Canada, Trump addressed speculation, linking the breakdown to Canada's push for recognition of Palestinian statehood.
No, I didn't like what they said, but that's their opinion. I didn't like that. Not a deal breaker, but we haven't spoken to Canada today.
However, shortly afterwards, the White House announced that Canada's tariff rate will be raised from 25% to 35%. The White House said the higher tariffs are in response to continued inaction and retaliation, adding that Trump found it necessary to increase the duties to effectively address the existing emergencies. The Brazilian government on Thursday slammed the Trump administration's decision to impose a 50% tariff on its imports, calling it an unfair measure, and warned of possible retaliation if no resolution is reached. However, Brazil's Finance Minister Fernando Haddad told reporters that the tariff plan is not as bad as expected, adding that the tariffs will also do harm to the American people as it will drive up prices in the U.S. Meanwhile, the Brazilian government cited data from the American Chamber of Commerce in Brazil, noting that 694 Brazilian products exported to the U.S. making up 45% of total exports, are exempt from the tariffs. The new 50% tariffs are expected to impact roughly 35.9% of Brazil's exports to the U.S. Meanwhile, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said on Thursday that her government had secured a 90-day extension to work on a trade deal, which will pause new tariffs.
We remain as we are, and it's 90 days to keep talking, holding dialogue, and building a long-term agreement.
Sheinbaum says the extension averted the 30% tariffs that were scheduled to take effect on Friday. She added that the new extension will also allow for Mexico to be exempt from the 25% tariffs imposed by President Trump earlier this year in response to the fentanyl crisis. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And findings show Korea's exports expanded for the second month in a row in July, gaining 5.9% on year, driven by cars, ships and chips. Our correspondent Moon Jae-young covers the latest trade numbers.
South Korea's exports rose for the second consecutive month in July, thanks to robust demand for chips, automobiles and ships, despite the impact of U.S. tariffs. According to the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy on Friday, the value of exports last month amounted to over $60.8 billion, up nearly 6% compared to the previous year. This marked the highest ever for any July, setting record figures for the second consecutive month. The main contributor to this growth was semiconductors, the country's top export engine. Outbound shipments of chips rose more than 31% year-on-year, setting a record high for any July, backed by an increase in fixed prices of memory chips and strong demand for high-value products such as HBM and DDR5.
It seems true that there were movements to pre-secure inventory in areas like semiconductors and bioproducts before tariff impositions. Even if the increase in chip exports was initially due to advanced purchases, the current trend appears to be driven by robust demand, and we expect exports will not suddenly drop.
He added that the sector is expected to deliver a strong performance throughout the year on the growth of the AI market, since Korean companies manufacture high-value chips that U.S. firms cannot make. In terms of automobiles, outbound shipments rose nearly 9% thanks to strong performances in the EU, Latin America, and the CIS. But auto exports to the U.S. dropped more than 1%, with shipments of EVs plummeting nearly 98% due to U.S. tariffs. The Trade Ministry says the Korean auto industry avoided the worst-case scenario with Thursday's trade deal between Seoul and Washington, which reduced U.S. tariffs on Korean cars to 15% from 25%, the same rate for cars from Japan and Europe. Ship exports spiked, marking the fifth consecutive month of year-on-year increases, driven by robust demand for high-value ships such as LNG tankers. On the other hand, machinery exports plunged more than 17%, and steel exports dropped nearly 3% due to U.S. tariffs. Regionally, exports to the U.S. went up more than 1%, but it marked the first time, at least since the start of last year, that the country came in third place after China and ASEAN. While exports to the EU, India, and CIS nations rose, those to China dropped 3% on sluggish demand for petrochemical products and wireless communications equipment. Imports grew 0.7% to $54.2 billion, resulting in a trade surplus of $6.61 billion. Moon Jae-young, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., Foreign Minister Cho Hyun and his American counterpart Marco Rubio have reaffirmed their commitment to North Korea's denuclearization. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
Seoul and Washington's top diplomats reaffirmed their cooperation on handling a nuclear North Korea and began planning a top-level summit expected within 2 weeks. On Thursday local time, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met in Washington, D.C., marking their first official talks since the Lee Jae-myung administration took office in early June. According to their respective officers, the two officials discussed the South Korea-U.S. alliance and broader security issues in the region. Seoul's foreign ministry says they exchanged views on North Korea, agreed on its complete denuclearization, with the two officials deeming it necessary to strengthen cooperation on Pyongyang. They also agreed to enhance trilateral relations with Japan based on the Seoul-Washington alliance. The US State Department's readout further expressed serious concern over North Korea's growing military ties with Russia and said Cho and Rubio both committed to the full implementation of international sanctions against Pyongyang. The statement also positioned trilateral cooperation with Tokyo as deterrence against regional threats, as well as noting the importance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. Cho and Rubio welcomed the sudden conclusion of trade negotiations by finance and trade officials the day before, and pledged to cooperate on supply chains and emerging technologies. In particular, Cho emphasized a third pillar of the partnership in advanced technologies alongside security and trade cooperation. Given that security issues were not substantially addressed in the trade negotiations as a so-called package deal, continued discussions are expected on alliance modernization. The term refers to adjusting the role and scope of the Korea-US alliance in line with changing strategic conditions and as Washington presses allies to contribute more towards their own security. The summit between Presidents Lee and Trump could serve as a starting point, with a potential 2+2 ministerial meeting to follow. Speaking with reporters after their meeting, the Korean foreign minister said he and Rubio held constructive talks and have started coordinating for the Leaders' Summit. Trump declared the previous day that a meeting would be held within 2 weeks. Separately, Cho requested Washington's support and cooperation for South Korea's hosting of this year's Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum in October, having sent an invitation to President Trump to attend the leaders' meeting. Rubio responded that he was well aware of this and would actively consider the request. Seoul Light Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung believes South Korea's survival depends on balanced regional growth. Remarks to this end were shared during a meeting with the heads of 17 cities and provinces at the Yongsan presidential office earlier on this Friday. To take a listen.
수도권보다는 지방에 더 인센티브를 지급하자. 똑같이가 아니라 더 많은 지원을 해야 비로소 균형을 조금이라도 유지할 수 있다는 생각을 앞으로 국가 정책 결정이나 예산 재정 배분에서도 이런 원칙을 최대한 강화해 나가려고 합니다.
The president also urged local governments to strengthen public safety measures, calling these efforts the state's top responsibility. Likewise, today's talks touched upon disaster response strategies and ways to boost domestic consumption. The former presidential office, Cheong Wa Dae, has closed its gates to the public. The closure follows the Lee Jae-myung administration's plan to move the top office back to Cheong Wa Dae from Yongsan. The former Yoon Suk-yeol administration had opened Cheong Wa Dae up to the public back in May 2022. Since then, some 7 million people have made their way to the grounds of the Blue House. Also, foot traffic surged after the new administration shared intentions to return to Cheong Wa Dae after the June 3rd election. The government is welcoming public opinion on APEC-related promotion strategies as well as infrastructure and service proposals. Now, those interested can share their thoughts online starting today until August 31st by clicking on the banner titled KPop on the websites of the Office for Government Policy Coordination, the Foreign Ministry, or APEC 2025 Korea. This campaign follows Prime Minister Kim Min-seok's call for public communication in preparation for the annual economic meeting of 21 states that will take place in Gyeongju on October 31st to November 1st. Korean shamanism is expanding its presence on screens big and small through animations and movies amid growing interest in its practice and more. My colleague Choi Soo-young files this report.
Set in South Korea, K-pop Demon Hunters follows a popular girl group that protects the human world from evil spirits while uncovering a boy group of Grim Reapers known as 저승사자. The Netflix original animation has become the most viewed original animated movie ever, with his soundtrack also topping the Billboard single charts. Last year, the Korean film Exhuma drew an audience of over 10 million at home and became a hit in Asia and North America, fueled by themes such as feng shui and shamanic rituals. Today, one of the hottest themes in K-content is K-shamanism, or K-busok in Korean, a traditional belief system incorporating rituals, divination, and faith in spirits and deities. With 1,000 years of history, Korean shamanism is a folk tradition where shamans, or budang, guide people by praying for good fortune and driving away misfortune.
Shamanism exists in many parts of the world, but in Korea, it is unique because of the strong role of budang. Their traditional music, costumes, and performances have deeply influenced Korean folk arts, giving Korean shamanism a distinct cultural and artistic character.
Unlike the Western view that defines the human world as good and the spirit world as evil, Korean shamanism sees shamans as mediators between the two, a belief that gives K-busok its unique power.
Western occult stories focus on exorcists, while K-pop demon hunters shows a more Eastern view. Luni, a half-hunter spirit, and Chinu, a grim reaper, reveal human qualities, moving beyond the simple divide of good and evil. Even Hollywood now borrows from Asian values, avoiding absolute dualism, showing how Eastern philosophy is shaping occult content.
Korean shamanism's power as occult content comes from its cultural freshness rather than religion.
Korea is not tied to a single religion, allowing shamanism to keep its own identity alongside others. Unlike Japan, where cultural images were long ago exhausted by Japonism, Korea's shamanism remains fresh, offering untapped images that enrich today's content.
K-busok content is diversifying and becoming a key icon of K-culture with growing potential. Cheong, Arirang News.
And staying on the cultural front, the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art is offering those interested the chance to indulge in 100 years of Korean art starting from the early 1900s. Our Pyongyang was there.
100 years of modern and contemporary Korean art, now in one place. The National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art in Gwacheon is offering a rare panoramic look at a century of Korean art in an exhibition so large that the museum has separated it into two parts, Korean Modern and Contemporary Art 1 and 2. Part 1 covers the early 20th century, a period marked by Korea's rapid modernization, colonial occupation, and national division. Part 2 picks up after the Korean War and traces the evolution of Korean art through post-war reconstruction, industrialization, and democratization. Together, they feature more than 250 key works by over 100 artists, offering a rare panoramic look at a century of Korean art. Visitors say the opportunity to view both exhibitions together is a rewarding experience.
I've been waiting for part 2 because I love modern and contemporary art. I actually saw part 1 of the exhibition before, and I really liked how it was divided by time period. It made things easy to follow. Personally, I love the transition from figurative to abstract art during this era, so it was great to see works by artists like Yoo Young-guk and Lee Sung-ja all in one place.
Both exhibitions have sections called the Artist Room, dedicated to showcasing works by renowned artists such as Kim Hwan-gi and Yoon Hyung-gun. Another highlight is a section that re-examines under-recognized figures.
This section focuses on female modernist artists. These women weren't part of major art groups or ideologies, but rather they explored their own unique styles. Their works add a rich new layer to the male-dominated history of Korean contemporary and modern art.
The exhibition closes with the debut of Sternbound No. 23, a major installation by contemporary artist Lee Bul. Suspended in air with steel, mirror, and film components, the futuristic piece explores themes of technology, the human body, and utopia.
There's growing interest in Korean culture both at home and abroad, but not many chances to explore the history of Korean art. We hope this exhibition gives visitors a clear, step-by-step look at how Korean art has evolved over the past century.
By presenting parts 1 and 2 side by side, MMCA Gwacheon allows visitors to follow a full arc of Korea's modern artistic transformation, from the days of colonization to modern global expression. The museum says it plans to keep the dual exhibitions running for at least 2 years. Hyun-yeong, Arirang News.
And here in Seoul, the city's renowned light show is illuminating its summer nights for the very first time and will continue to do so until next Sunday, that is August 10th. Our Park Hyo-bin has a glimpse.
As night falls in summer, the carving aluminum surface of Dongdaemun Design Plaza bursts into color, shimmering with wave after wave of vivid digital light.
This is the first time media art is being showcased here at Dongdaemun Design Plaza during summer. Amid a tropical night, this is the perfect place to cool off and enjoy art.
The first summer edition of Seoul Light DDP expands beyond the iconic structure, turning the surrounding park and the historic Seoul City Wall, a defensive wall built during the Joseon Dynasty, into a stage for immersive storytelling. Cascading visuals resembling waterfalls flow over ancient stone, while nearly 200 drop-shaped LED sculptures change color, creating a vibrant rhythm with the night. The central theme, Textures of Light, unfolds across multiple zones. Visitors are invited to walk along the city's fortress wall and encounter projections, laser shows, and kinetic installations along the way.
It's a lot of fun. I like the music. It's loud. It's exciting.
Artists from around the world also joined the summer edition of Seoul Light DDP. Through pulsing light and sound, a Polish art team transforms invisible algorithms into an experience that feels like a peek into the future.
The installation you see behind me, it's called Flux. It's done by our studio that is called Komputery. We're from Poland and we're grateful to be here. Thank you for inviting us to Korea. It's always a nice time to be here.
One of the standout moments from the opening ceremony is a hanbok fashion show, where traditional Korean garments are reimagined through light. The fashion show blends tradition with innovation as models and contemporary hanbok walk through radiant displays of media art. Since 2019, Seoul Light DDP has attracted over 1 million visitors annually and earned global acclaim, most recently sweeping the top 3 international design awards. The summer edition runs nightly from 8 to 10 p.m. through August 10th. As the city swelters, this luminous escape offers a breath of visual cool. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
August started off under sweltering heat, but there is some welcome news. Rain early next week will bring a slight break from the ongoing heat wave, especially to the western regions. But that means another steamy weekend. This morning, Seoul once again broke the record for the most tropical night in the month of July. 23 sweaty nights. Meanwhile, some parts of Gangwon-do province have seen those warnings downgraded or lifted, including in Taebaek. But the rest of the country will sleep in the heat. Seoul begins the day at 27 degrees tomorrow morning. Daegu, Busan kicking off the day at 26 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will be climbing to 35 degrees Celsius. Daegu, Gyeongju sweltering at 37 degrees, along with very strong UV levels. There could be some scattered showers in parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do province on Saturday. Well, until that rain relief comes, take care in this extreme heat. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, so do stay with us. Thank you for now.